I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's RealTime Fantasy Sports Show, I'm going to give you 5 top plays for week 1 of the NFL season. So these might be guys that you're on the fence about playing, or maybe guys that are under the radar that could do well, but I'm trying not to give you the sure thing every week starts when I do these. So there might be a couple players that fill that category some weeks, but for the most part, I'm going to try to stay away from going with guys that we know should be in your lineup anyway. So I'm going to go with guys that I think you have some question marks about playing, or some guys you might not be thinking about playing for whatever reason, I should say. All right, so now let's get into it. 5 top plays for week 1. My first player is Kerryon Johnson with the Detroit Lions. So DeAndre Swift is there, expected to play a big role this season, but he's been banged up in training camp. I don't think he'll have a huge role in week 1. Adrian Peterson just signed. He could get some carries as well, but it really looks like Kerryon Johnson's going to get the bulk of the load at running back for Detroit in week 1. So I think this bodes well for him. He plays the Bears, who are very good against the pass, but they're just middle of the road against the run. They allowed the 16th most fantasy points to running backs last year. So I think early in the season, Johnson's going to be a guy you'll want in your fantasy lineups. Another player I like this week, he's a superstar and expected to have a huge fantasy season, but he has a tough matchup this week against San Francisco, Kyler Murray. I still think I'd feel good about playing him. So last year in games against San Francisco, he had 25-plus fantasy points each of his games against San Francisco. I know this defense is very good. Murray still produced good fantasy numbers. The scores in the games against San Francisco last year, Arizona lost both of them, 28-25 and 35-26. So they put up some points in these games despite the tough matchup. I think Murray's going to do well again this week, be just a solid fantasy play for fantasy teams. He might not have that monster week, but I still think he'll produce solid numbers, and I would feel fine about putting him in my lineup despite the tough matchup. Another top play I like this week is Phillip Lindsay with Denver. So he's still going to have a big role this year. I know Melvin Gordon's there, but there's been talk that in camp, Lindsay's been getting a lot of work with the number ones. They've been splitting time at running back. So I don't think he's a guy you can just forget about. I think he's going to be a good play a lot of weeks, especially at the flex spot. And I would use him this week against Tennessee. They allowed the 13th most fantasy points to running backs last season. They're good against the pass, but they can be susceptible against the run. I think Denver's going to go run heavy in this game, a heavy dose of Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. I think Lindsay could be a good flex play in week 1. Another player I like as a top play this week is Rams tight end Tyler Higbee. Higbee had a monster finish to last season, had at least 18 fantasy points, 5 straight games to end last year. He plays the Cowboys to open his season. They allowed the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends last year, so they really struggled in stopping the tight end last season. I think that could be his theme again for Dallas this year. So I think Tyler Higbee's going to get a workout in this game, a lot of work at tight end for Los Angeles, and produce a big game. Lastly, my last top play, easy for me to say, is Chicago Bears receiver Anthony Miller. No, not Allen Robinson, but Anthony Miller. I think Miller could be a bit of a sleeper this year. He's really been raved about in training camp, said he's been the best receiver in camp. A lot of reports are saying that, I should say. He plays Detroit this week, allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to receivers. I know Mitchell Trubisky is a concern, but Anthony Miller, I think, it could have a big showing in this one. I think he could really have a breakout year for Chicago, and this could be the start of it in week 1. So I would plug him in my lineup if you're looking for a receiver, maybe at that number 3 spot or even the flex play. All right, those are my 5 top plays for this week, week 1 of the NFL season. Good luck in all of your games this week. The opener, I know I'm really excited about it, especially the game Thursday night to open things off. Houston and Kansas City should be a great game. We're going to keep doing these videos every day, give you some different content. So these have been my 5 top plays. And don't forget, we still have drafts going off. So if you want to get in a draft before the season starts, you can still do it. Our fantasy championship is about to be sold out. It is super close. So if you want one last chance to get in that, go to fantasychampionship.com, chance to win $300,000. We also have all different formats as well, different price points. So if you want to get in a league today, do it now before the start of week 1. You can go to rtsports.com, click on the football link, and then money leagues, see all the different leagues we have to offer, and get in a league today. All right, this has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day, everyone.